Mhm. All right, the lobby's filling up already. Very nice to see. Good morning, everyone. We'll get going in a couple of minutes here. We're just waiting for the lobby to sort of reach maximum capacity, and then we'll make a start. Awesome, nice for filling up. Maybe feel free to drop a comment in the chat if you want to say where you're coming from, tuning in from. It'd be cool to see where exactly everyone is calling from.
That would be nice to know where people are dialing in from and yeah, and maybe also why they're joining today, what they're
Hmm.
hoping to get out of the session would also be interesting.
We were just joking how this is quite an international lobby right now, right, Kat? Both British. I'm in Amsterdam right now. You're in
Sophia.
Sofia,
Mhm.
yeah, via Ljubljana and was it Zurich?
Zurich, yeah, well
Yeah,
remembered. Yeah,
my
yeah. I'm on a
goodness.
bit of a European tour
Yeah,
before heading back to London tonight.
Andreas coming in from Lithuania, Portsmouth for Jolene.
Nice to see you, Jolene. I will see you again on Friday. That's nice. We have an event. Ah, there's somebody joining from my hometown in Somerset.
Who can? I love
So
Somerset.
nice. Have you been? That's so
I
nice.
have. It was my family holiday spot for years. We were, gosh, what is it? Is it South Ham or West Hams? South Hams, I think.
Okay.
Around like the Salcombe area. Maybe that's
Oh,
Devon, actually. Maybe not Somerset, but yeah.
and lovely Carols joining from Solihull. That's nice.
Latvia, Solihull. My goodness, this is
This
proper,
is a
proper
truly international
international.
event. Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
So good.
Absolutely love it. I think maybe we'll just wait a couple more minutes and then we can sort of make a start.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Great to see everyone. Cool. I think maybe let's make a start, if that's okay with you, Kat.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome,
Um,
awesome.
let's get started. So,
Let's go.
the One Habit Advantage, I'm very excited to be working with you, Tobias, today. This is like a very different experience. Normally it's just me, so it's really nice to be working with you on this.
Absolutely.
So I think what's really important, maybe for the next 40 minutes or so, is that we try our best to be here, and that's not easy in today's modern world. Somebody at this conference I was at in Ljubljana last week shared that they calculated in their team that they were receiving more than 150 notifications a day. And I'm
That's too
not
much, isn't it?
yeah, I'm not even sure if that was also including email. So you might be sitting here right now, working from home or from the office or on the road or wherever you are, and I can honestly guarantee you that you will get so much more out of this event if you can try to, turn the phone over and try to mute Teams and things, because this session is actually interactive, and the reason I like to run interactive sessions is because the topic I'm going to be sharing with you today is so important and it actually requires our attention. So yeah, is that good with you? Shall we start?
That's perfect. Yeah. Maybe just a quick sort of bit of housekeeping as well beforehand.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, by all means, just sort of drop them in the chat and we'll pick them up as we go along. We'll also have a bit of dedicated Q&A time at the end. So if you have a more in-depth question, perhaps a bit of a discussion, then feel free to sort of wait until then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get started. I'm going to share my slides with you and we'll talk through them. And yeah, just as we go through, please feel free to ask any questions or drop any comments in the chat, and Tobias will share them with me as we go through. So I'm going to start, and obviously we can see our names on the screen and my background, but for those of you who have not met me before, my name's Kat Thorne. And I've been speaking for just over 4 years about the power of making one small positive habit change and the impact that that has on us, both personally and professionally, and in particular in terms of how do you build stronger teams. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time setting the scene. And then we will get into some interactive questions, which you can use your phone to take part in, or your laptop. And then we will see, how we go on this small journey to uncovering a bit more about yourself. So here's the very stark reality that we find ourselves in. And I know we have a global audience today, and I love that. And this is very much a global challenge that we find ourselves in. So, over the past few years, especially since COVID, we have seen more and more organizations are more and more concerned about how to improve employee performance, resilience. How do we build stronger teams? And this has become more challenging. I'm sure you have also experienced this, Tobias, in your work as well, because people are actually more separate than they've ever been.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah.
We see more hybrid working, more working from home, less connection. And for many people, that's offering great flexibility, and there are so many advantages to that. However, despite all of these initiatives that we have seen, people are still stressed. And in fact, not only are people stressed, people are exhausted, people are overwhelmed. And I remember, I always like to tell the story. I remember going into a London office not so long ago, and I was delivering a session like this, and I was walking past a glass office, and I saw someone doing a downward dog yoga pose. And that's probably quite normal in a fancy office on a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. But what was a bit unusual was that there was somebody next to them that was picking up a baby goat and putting it on their back as they were doing the downward dog.
Sounds like an
And,
amazing benefit.
and this is goat yoga. But in all seriousness, I think we have tried a lot of initiatives, and I think a lot of things are not actually working. So whilst I support all of these initiatives, and I think they have their own benefits and they have a space, I think we are missing a huge opportunity, and it's what I call the human advantage. So, unfortunately, for those of you who are joining from my home country, I'm a very proud Brit, but in this fairly recent study where they surveyed over 71 countries, the UK scored pretty low. But to be fair to the UK and all the countries that took part, actually, all of the countries rated quite low in this report. And what I want to draw your attention to is, what do you think? And maybe we can have a quick brainstorm in the chat. What do you think are the top three contributing factors as to what is causing poor global state?
Mm.
And those of you who are from the UK, you're not allowed to say weather. It's something we love to complain about. Tobias, I'll let you have a go first. Any ideas what you think are the top
Yeah,
three contributing factors?
yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think the first one that might come to mind is maybe a hyper focus on productivity. And I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive, but I'm thinking it could be kind of a mental thing. And again, this is just pure hypothesizing here, so I'm not really sure of the results. But um, perhaps if there is sort of this hyper focus and therefore a culture of productivity, then actually it can actually decrease, first of all, the quality of work, but also the effort behind the work in general, and the feeling that you have towards your organization and your culture that you work in, which is actually very important. It's the thing that you engage with actually the most every single day, 5 days a week. I think we forget just how important that kind of working environment is, and how important or how much of a pivotal role it plays on your mental health. And it's kind of this cyclical cycle, right, as well. If you are working in a positive environment, you think better. And if you think better, you're probably more productive. And the cycle kind of enters this sort of positive feedback loop like that. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Rokas has just written a good point in the chat that this was from 3 years ago, and they bet that 2026 would be worse results. And
It's entirely possible.
yeah, but they've done different studies. So 2024 was more focused on 18s to 34, and they did a wider survey. I think they surveyed over 80 countries, and what they are
Mm,
finding in the report is very similar, that stress and anxiety is increasing.
mm,
Andreas has said loneliness, fast-paced competition. So let me just address your idea first, because
sure.
I think it's so all the ideas are actually very linked. So actually the top contributing factor is your mobile phone.
Okay.
And I think that ties in quite nicely to some of the answers we are seeing in the chat, but also to what you are saying, because our mobile phones are allowing us to be on 24/7. So they're allowing this ever increasing feeling of needing to respond, needing to be available, whether that's on a professional or a personal
Mm,
level. So I think that is very much the case. And one of the things I talk about is getting a home for your phone, because I think we have become slaves to our phones. And I understand, like everyone else, there are exceptions to this where you need to use your phone for certain things. But for example, I don't take my phone to my bedroom anymore and haven't done for several years now. And
really?
I know that's quite radical,
That
but
is quite radical.
I meet on average one person in 1,000 person audience on a weekly basis who also is on this trajectory. So
Mm,
I think when we think about the top three contributing factors, and Andreas has got the third one correct, loneliness. So the third one is actually lack of connection, lack of community, and ultimately loneliness. So in a world where we're more connected than we've ever been before, we're actually more disconnected.
mm,
And I think it's why we are seeing such an incredible shift to communities. So, for example, in my city, we have running clubs which have several hundreds of people turning up. We have communities now in local saunas. I have my own sea dipping community. So we meet on the beach every week to get in the sea together.
mm.
And I would strongly advise, guide people if they don't have their own community to build them, because it's such a powerful way to build stronger, more resilient individuals and ultimately teams. And I do think you can build communities in your workplaces. And I think it can start with positive habits.
Definitely, yeah. I think as well, it's kind of a unique symptom of a post-COVID era, right? We kind of went to obviously remote work, and remote work has stayed, and there's obviously many benefits to that. But there are some cons, which is the loneliness piece, I think. And just to speak on the community idea as well, I think the reason why we're seeing maybe an eruption or a resurgence of that as a culture is because you would typically find what you're looking for there in your workplace. You would find your group of mates that you see maybe 3, 4 days, 5 days a week. Now you might not have that at all, or you might just have that once or twice a week, and maybe that's not enough for some people. And so actually, they're sort of looking externally for that same sort of social motivator.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately what we are also seeing with some of the other activities we're doing outside of this particular work that I do. So I'm also involved in, another community organization, is that people just want to be together. And it's not
Mm,
necessarily about the act. Like, for example, with the sea dipping, it's not that we are all really big fans of getting in freezing cold water in January. Like, no, it's that people want to be around other positive, energetic, non-judgmental
yes.
people, and they want to connect. And And I think there's also another huge challenge around this, which is because people have got very comfortable with working from home or working remotely or not commuting, there it feels harder sometimes to reconnect people, especially in
Mm.
person. And I'm actually working with a big organization now, and we are constantly talking about the camera on or off debates, which I think you can argue both ways. But actually, in reality, if I was to present this webinar without my camera on, it would give those of you who are listening to this a completely different experience.
Yeah.
So, just to tie up this point, so phones was the first one. The one that people often find hardest to guess is the second one, which is food. And especially the increased consumption of ultra processed foods. And I think, UK is leading the way in this.
Mm.
50% of our diet is processed, but actually we are seeing this growing now everywhere across the world. So, and I think if you look at the pace of life, as somebody mentioned in the chat, the access to technology now, it's clear to see how these three things are really heavily connected. So this is what's quite interesting is despite all these advances in technology and hybrid working and AI, which is coming in thick and fast, actually productivity is starting to slump. And that's again a global data. And I believe that the only thing that we can be certain of in our businesses and in our life is change. And one of my very dear friends from school, he's been working at Meta for 14 years. He lives in California. He's very senior in Meta, and he's just been made redundant. And we know, I'm sure there are people who are joining this call or listening to the recording who are also maybe been through restructures or are working on restructuring. And it's part of the change that we see now in the world. But I think the problem with our society is we wake up and we go into this autopilot and we're not ready for things that are happening to us. So we don't have enough energy in the tank, enough resilience to handle whatever changes. And I gave a talk on the impact of AI on well-being and performance recently in Saudi Arabia. And I essentially said, we can't take advantage of all of these technologies if we are not healthy humans. It's very, very simple. People are still our greatest asset. So I believe that we can build really strong, resilient workforces, teams, and individuals, but it requires us to make one positive habit change. So it would be a good time now to get into your brains. And I'm going to do this completely anonymously. So don't overthink this question. I would just like to know on a typical day, when you first open your eyes, what's one or two of the very first things you think about when you open your eyes in the morning? So to take part in this, you can just scan the QR code, or if you are doing it on a laptop, you can just type in www.menti.com and just type in this 8-digit code. And I'm hoping it's working okay for you.
I've just submitted mine. I know immediately.
Okay, amazing. Right, I'm going to just swap the screen. So can you let me know you can see that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So now this is where we get to check if everyone is still live and listening and participating, and we haven't lost anybody to their emails or a TikTok rabbit hole or anything else, which is completely normal, happens all the time. It might be good, Tobias, just to drop this in the chat as well. Although I can see maybe 50% of the people are logged on, which is great
Let's just make a little hyperlink.
because we will use the same code throughout today.
Back pain. Yep. More sleep. Yep. I cannot do it. Yeah. The internal monologue. This day will be great. Complete polar opposite. I love it.
So we'll just give people a minute and then you will become familiar with this tool and you can use it
Mhm.
throughout today. 3 a.m. Geez, that'll work then.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend emerging, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. So even if we just look at the 12 responses we've had so far, a couple of them are like one's quite neutral, like shower and coffee. It's not particularly positive or negative. There's one that is super positive. This day will be great. But let's face it, the majority of these first thoughts um, are usually not so positive. And one of the worst ones that I see regularly is here we go again.
Mm,
And I always explain that it depends on the intonation of how you pronounce that. But this, to me, this question always confirms that the majority of people, when they are waking up in the morning, they are not focusing on how do I ensure I'm physically and mentally ready and I'm going to go into my day like a wild animal. Instead, it's like, oh, all the things I have to do. Oh, and the vibration and the energy is already quite
mm,
heavy and quite low. And even someone's written here, I cannot do it. Like, I cannot do what? Get out of bed. I can't do another day in this life. I can't go to work. Like, and then it's like, what already? Can I sleep more? I'm tired. And this honestly, it doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter how senior people are, it doesn't matter what gender or background, it's the same. Everywhere I go, it's the same responses. And as we're going through this, if you want to put any comments or thoughts in the chat, please do.
I have a comment slash
Yeah.
thought, mainly on something that sort of worked for me recently. I, fun facts. I'm a bit of an aviation nerd. I wish I could fly. um, very interested in aircraft and aviation in general. There is this saying in terms of flight safety as a pilot, which is to fly ahead of the aircraft or be on top of the aircraft, which means that essentially you're always kind of thinking about what you're doing next and just generally staying ahead of the game. So you're proactive rather than reactive. And something that I've really tried to do recently is sort of fly the aircraft of my life. Not to sound sort of melodramatic, but one of the sort of practical implications of that is putting myself to bed a little bit earlier, waking up a little bit earlier, and rather than slipping back into the habit of waking up, and I was the one who wrote emails, by the way, on that. So
Mhm.
pulling my phone up, looking at my emails, immediately thinking, okay, this is my task list for today. Instead, waking up a little bit earlier, having that half hour to an hour to myself to compose myself, sort of start the day on my own terms, rather than playing catch up, essentially, of, oh my gosh, I need to get out of bed, need to shower, I need to brush my teeth, need to get the coffee going, need to start answering emails, need to jump into calls an hour later. Um, that has actually really, really helped, not only in terms of my own productivity, but also uh, pan mental health in general. So I can't recommend this enough. I don't know if maybe you sort of had experience along similar terms, Kat.
Yeah, and it's one of my number one positive habits. And but we also, I think with bedtimes, we get something called revenge bedtime procrastination.
I'm so guilty of this.
And I get it. And I think especially for parents, if you've got young children and you've put them to bed and then you have this window and there's no way you're going to bed because you haven't had your time.
Mm,
But also, I think it's interesting to be open to flipping the script and creating your own time also in the morning. It's
mm,
just because we're so conditioned to do everything at the end of the day. But in reality, what happens is you give your energy to everything and everyone else, and you end up giving the worst of yourself to the people you love the most. And that
mm,
also includes yourself. So there are very small things we can do to take back some control. And I think this, by the way, was me for almost my whole career. Like I always started the day reactively. I never went to bed and woke up at the same time. I didn't really pay any attention to any of this. I was just running like I was on a hamster wheel all the time. And I constantly woke up feeling tired, constantly snoozed my alarm. And I will tell you about my story in a second, but this is quite interesting. I read some research recently that suggests that we could be losing potentially a day a week, the equivalent of a day a week, to one habit.
That's
And
scary.
yeah,
That's
it's really
really
scary.
scary.
And as soon as I say this, every single person listening to this will go, "Oh yeah, actually." And it's this constant task switching. So it's this
Mm,
notification epidemic that we find ourselves in. So it's probably a lot to do with our phones, but it's not exclusively to do with your phone. It's just that and I think, it's why Amazon have created this great system now where you leave something in your basket and it reminds you, because that is the classic, you're in the middle of something and you get distracted by something else and then you're doing something else. And people don't realize how A, mentally exhausting this is, and B, how much time it takes for you to refocus. So I used to be somebody that would check my emails within seconds of waking up, have my emails open all day, have everything open all the time. And actually, that in the end was my high performing routine that nearly destroyed me. So just very briefly, I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the context as to why I'm here and sharing this with you. This is all based on life experience, but everything I talk about is almost like the 101 of being a human being. And even at this conference last week in Ljubljana, which was with all of these incredible providers of well-being technology and platforms, even people who are working in this industry are still, for the most part, not practicing the fundamentals of how to perform sustainably as a human being. So it's so simple that we've almost just forgotten about it. And
mm,
and the way I look at this is if you think about yourself in terms of your body and your mind and how much time and energy you invest in those two things. And nobody in the previous question wrote like, "Oh, I'm so grateful that my legs are working today," or things like that. And the thing is, that's because nobody thinks about their legs when they wake up, unless, there's a reason, specific reason. But for the most part, we just wake up and we go straight on autopilot. And that's what I did for my whole life until 10 years ago. And there were three things I used to do every single morning when I woke up. I used to snooze my alarm. Every single alarm function has a snooze, but no one tells you how toxic it is and how much it's destroying your health. It actually makes you more tired. Then I would check my phone, usually like this, with one eye shut, and I would just force my eye open, which, like, it sounds funny and everyone laughs because everyone's done it. But actually, I realize, like, I think that's the body sending you a message that you're not ready for that information. And then I would be straight into like my phone, checking emails, like some people shared in that first thought, like hyperventilating, heart's going, what do I have to do? Da, 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 da. And my whole message is it's not that we shouldn't be working hard. It's not that you don't need to work hard. It's just that before you start running into the day, it's completely transformative if you can build your energy, if you can build your resilience, if you can get yourself in a really high performing state. And I think at the moment, so many people are walking around our world, running on empty or, in the red.
mhm,
And it's like, how often have you left your phone to go run completely out of battery? It's quite rare. We have power banks, everyone's always trying to charge stuff up. But what about you? How do you feel? How do the people around you feel? So this was my experience in 2016. And because of these habits, because of this constant neglect of my own self, signing up for gyms and then never going in them, definitely going to eat really healthy this week until, Monday night after a long weekend of
Mhm.
partying or whatever. And then it's like, no, the good habit's gone out the window. I'm just going to order a large pizza and eat it. And tomorrow was always the promise. And if you think about it, you wouldn't make a promise with somebody and then like to meet a friend in a cafe and then just not turn up. But we
No,
make
of course not.
promises on a daily with ourselves and we break them.
Mm.
So, anyway, I have a whole TEDx about this story, but the point is that I was very high performing. I was one of the top performing people in a 400 person tech company. I was traveling all around the world. I was really successful, but it wasn't sustainable because I didn't have the fundamentals to keep me sustainable and healthy. And these are what I call the roots of the tree. These are positive habits. And this is everything to do with the 101 of being a human being. Like what you put in your body, like every little decision that you are making is shaping your experience of life. So the reason I used to feel so tired was because I never slept well, because either I had drunk too much alcohol, or I wasn't going to bed regularly, or I wasn't exercising, like everything, or I was just scrolling at night, like everything was linked to the choices I was making beforehand. But because I was running so fast in life, and now 10 years later, the pace of life is so fast. There's so much information that we are just neglecting ourselves. And I really believe that my own life experience is that the more you invest in yourself, the better you perform sustainably everywhere. Like everything benefits, everyone benefits. But yet it's really hard for us to make these changes, mostly because we feel like we don't have time or it's hard to know where to start.
Mhm.
So I think, I don't know if you can relate to this, but this is the challenge that we wake up and we go straight into autopilot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite quotes that I wrote, of course. That's probably why it's my favorite, but it's so powerful. Like when we neglect ourselves, everyone pays the price, right? So your family, because you're not as patient, you don't have as much energy. The people you work alongside, maybe you're not as quick to respond, or you make decisions that aren't coming from clarity, they're coming from urgency. And when you look after yourself, everybody benefits. And I want to be clear about what I mean by looking after yourself, because part of the problem with the word well-being and, this whole concept of like self-care is it has different connotations for different people. So I usually just park all of those words and connotations and terminologies and just say, let's just take it back to the basics. It's just about your body and your brain.
Hmm.
What are you doing to ensure that those things, which is the most important asset you have right now to take care of, how much are you, how much effort, how much energy are you spending on those things? And I
Yeah.
think we're going to do an exercise in a second, which will show you where to put some focus, because this isn't an easy thing to do. So I just want to explain this very simple concept, and then we'll do the day in the life exercise, which is my favorite thing to do with people. So you might be sitting here thinking, yeah, this is all makes sense, and you're right, but actually I don't have time for any of this. I had somebody in one of my live events say this recently, I've got 4 children, I've got a very busy job, I've got a lot going on. I totally get it. But if you believe you don't have time and nothing can change, then guess what? The result will be exactly the same. But if you believe that it's possible to do 10 minutes of something for yourself before work, during work, after work, it depends, then all of a sudden you tap into some potential that you have inside of yourself. And I believe in this room, in this event, we have all of this potential that is untapped. Then you will take a different course of action and then you will get a different result. And that could be anything from 10-minute walk to stretching to a run to a cold shower, to going to bed 10 minutes earlier, to not checking your phone within the first 10 minutes of waking up, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's different for everybody. That is going to unlock the power of this whole concept. So, shall we get into the day in your life now? Hopefully, we
Let's do
still have
it.
people who are still actively listening, and I know that's really hard. Oh, we just got a really good comment in the chat. Rocker said one-on-one meeting while walking outside of the office. What a great idea.
Yeah, that's fantastic, actually.
So simple yet so powerful. And I think we started a lot of these good habits in COVID and then we sort of forgot about them a bit. So let's start then. So first of all, I want you to think about a typical day in the life of yourself. So from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, what are one or two of the things that you know you are doing that is somehow negatively affecting you? So it could be a typical day or it could be when it's quite stressful for you, but just scan through a day in the life of yourself. So from the moment you wake up on a typical day to when you go to sleep, what's one or two of the things you know you are doing that's somehow negatively affecting you? Let's hear from a couple of you to see what those things are. So hopefully, if you are still joining us live, you can see the Mentimeter, you can log in okay. The code is there on the screen.
It's a really good question. It's asking me to dive deep into my inner psychology.
So we already started to get some responses coming in. And they are all, and what I love about this is like it's this tool, especially as I've been using this the whole time I've been doing talks. And I love it because it's a really good way of people being able to share without feeling vulnerable because it's completely anonymous. But it also, what it does, imagine we're doing this talk to a team with like 500 people or however many people you have. And all of a sudden, everybody is seeing everyone else's answers and realizing they are not alone.
Mm,
Like, I'm also eating too much cake, or I'm also scrolling just before bed, or whatever it is. Um, so there's quite a few ideas coming up here, but and people are saying them in different ways, but we can group them. So there's a lot of procrastination. There's a lot to do with food, not putting myself to bed. I think that comes from like childhood, like because you're forced to go to bed at a certain time usually when you're a kid.
yeah,
Then when you become an adult, you decide otherwise. Um, but we've also got like smoking, negative thinking, doom scrolling, and I
doom
don't know,
scrolling.
I don't know about you, but doom scrolling, just the word, it's just awful. It's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I always have this kind of like I don't know, realization that you're like, oh my gosh, I've just rotted here on the sofa for the past hour. What am I doing with my life, you know?
Yeah, and I think we can lose so much time in our phones. And I have this healthy debate often with people who say, it's really relaxing. And I think it depends on what it is you are looking at. Because for me, like there are certain things I like to look at content on that fills me up, that, um I've got like a passion project and so I'm looking at things to do with that and that makes me really excited. But
Mm,
but it's but actually, if you think about the mental load and the mental drain, and I think most people now are over consuming and underproducing. So imagine, and I know this now from having much better habits around my phone, that I feel like I'm a new person because I'm not constantly attached to my phone and I have
mm,
space for things that make me feel good, feeding myself positive brain through food through reading or listening to things that are positive. But
yeah,
if we
yeah,
look at some of the things here, it also understanding we have an international audience here, we've got like constant messages, emails. It's like it's heavy on the information, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. A couple of things that stand out to me as well is first of all, couch potato, but second of all, lack of empathy. I notice in sort of my own, let's say, personal operation of how I, live my life professionally. If I'm going through a very stressful period where I'm working, many, many hours a day, um, thankfully, MELP is a very good place to work, but historically, this has been the reality of my work life at one point in my life. I would notice that the things that keep me positive slip. So things like regular exercise, going to the gym, um, eating and feeding myself on time and appropriately. So, like you said, less or more ultra processed food, fast food, that sort of stuff. Things that are easy to grab. It's these little things that are, 5% here, 5% there, but actually really add up over time. And that ultimately results in me spiral thinking or negatively spiraling. All of a sudden my default position on anything becomes negative rather than positive, or at the very least neutral.
Mm,
And I think that sort of speaks to the lack of empathy, because in a sense it becomes kind of like a mental poison. It becomes this, in the same way that I said positive feedback loop earlier, it becomes a positive feedback loop for all the wrong reasons.
yeah.
If you're taking back time, putting yourself to bed later, you feel worse in the morning, and you just do more of the same stuff because that is ultimately kind of what's easy. Actually, it's easy to grab the fast food. It's easy to grab the alcohol. It's easy to steal screen time for half an hour at the end of your day, and that all sort of contributes to worsening conditions, I think.
Yes.
And it's so easy to just let it happen as well.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I would always go through a phase where it would take me a while to recognize that the habits that kept me on the straight and narrow path was slipping.
Mm,
And so I've put in a lot of personal work to try and, first of all, stay on top of everything, but second of all, to catch those habits that are slipping as they're slipping and not once they're gone.
yeah, absolutely. But the idea today is just to focus on one thing. And I think, we can look at all of these results, and I'm going to ask you to answer the opposite question now. But we can look at all these things and think, oh my goodness, I need to change my diet. I need to stop looking at my phone. I need to start going to the gym. I need to do all these things. And then we can get really overwhelmed and end up doing
Mm.
nothing. So, let's ask the opposite question then. Whether you're doing these things or not, what are the habits that could help you? Like, what's one thing that you could do? Maybe it's something you used to do, or it's something you just know if you did it regularly for 10 minutes a day, what would be that one thing that would really supercharge you and help you
Mm.
to raise your awareness, your clarity, your energy? For me, I have this discovered somewhat recently cold showers. And I know when I say that, people go, oh, I hate the cold. But it's really life-changing. You turn into a wild animal,
Mm.
and you feel like you can do anything. It's the most powerful habit, and it's free, and most people are showering daily anyway, and you can just whack it onto cold and
I
30
would hope
seconds
so.
later. So there are lots of great ideas, but one thing I was going to say to respond to what you just said. So Jay Alderton, he's a creator. He helps mostly men, I think, in their 40s to help them gain back control of their life, like
Mm.
physically and mentally. And he says this really good thing, easy things, hard life, and
Hmm.
hard things, easy life. So it's also about catching the thought of, oh, I'm too tired, I can't be bothered, I haven't got time, to actually, if I just did 10 minutes, how would that impact me today? Um,
Yeah, definitely.
and we can see the biggest one here is meditation. And I think that's really powerful, but also really difficult
Yeah,
for us to do
yeah,
because it requires us to just sit and be with our thoughts. And if you think about where you might have done, because meditation takes many forms, you might have done a form of meditation while you're waiting for the bus or the train, but actually now we're filling every single gap with checking our phones.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, there's a saying that I also love, which I think taken out of context can be a little bit can be seen as being a bit toxic. But the saying is the greatest form of self love is discipline, and I don't know, that really resonates with me because actually to take that first step to do the meditation, to put yourself to bed earlier, to sacrifice that screen time, it takes a little bit of discipline, you
It
know.
does. It
And
does.
ultimately, that's you are doing it for yourself. You know it's going to be a good thing. It is an act of self-love, of self-appreciation, and I think it's very, very important. But meditation, for sure, in a sense, it's kind of meditation along the same terms. Uh, I stretch sometimes in the evenings, and me and my girlfriend will kind of make a habit out of it. We'll have a little mini program going on where for the next 2 weeks, we're going to stretch every single evening just for 10 minutes. But even still, that does absolute wonders, and it's these little 5 percenters here and there that add up over time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I want to share with you are just a couple of thoughts before we open up for Q&A. Um, One small habit change, and I really forgive people for thinking this, because again, this is what I spent most of my life doing, thinking it's not going to make a difference. Like Tobias, yeah, nice stretching for a few minutes a night. It's not going to make any difference. It's too basic. It's too such a small amount of time. And actually, one of the things I did in 2025 is I ran every single day for 10 minutes a day. And I recorded a whole podcast episode on 10 things I learned about running 10 minutes every day. And the amount of pushback I have, even now, about running for 10 minutes a day, especially from more athletic runners who run for, minimum of 10K or whatever. But actually, I want to share a little bit of insight into what just changing one small habit actually has. And it's much greater, and I call it the ripple effect. So if we look at our teams, making one small change will impact someone's energy level and their mood, which has a direct impact on their customers, their clients, their colleagues, their families. So it's not small. It's small in terms of the act itself, but the power is huge. Reduce the stress levels, be able to manage the workload better without the workload changing. Improve the balance of this idea of I'm always just on and working. And I think also, the dream is to enjoy what you do for a living. And if you already enjoy it, this will help you to enjoy it even more. And I just want to share this. I'm going to come back to this a second, but I want to share this image. So imagine, let's take meditation because that was the biggest answer here. Let's imagine this person is doing 10 minutes of meditation. I'm going to ask you to do this example with me, Tobias. So take
Yeah.
the yellow circle on the left. So this small circle here. How,
Hmm.
let's say that's your career. If you committed to doing a 10-minute meditation every morning when you first woke up, before you ran straight into your day and you ran off checking your phone and checking your emails and all this stuff, how do you think it would help you professionally in your career? What do you think the impact would be?
I think it's a little bit of a buzz phrase, but I feel like it would set the tone every day. And we're already talking about something that I'm trying to get better at. And admittedly, there's ebbs and flows to it, but overall, I'm hopeful that the trend is consistently better and better and better. But it allows you to switch off the autopilot, the reactive autopilot, and enter territory that is um, active, that is proactive, and one that kind of keeps you in control of your own decision making, I think.
Yeah, and it will have all of these ripple effects at work. It's you first and foremost, and then it will affect, a decision you make with a colleague or a client. And then
Mm.
if you think about it on an individual level, like you will be more calm, you will be, more present, like will feel all of these health benefits. You will feel better, you'll think more clearly, you'll probably be more productive. And your girlfriend will probably like you even more than she does now. And maybe your dog will also feel the benefits because when you're walking your dog, you are not constantly checking your phone, you're actually able to live in a more present state, which makes their, short life here on Earth more enjoyable as well. So
Mm.
I would really encourage people to either like mentally or physically take a picture of this, because this is the reminder that it's just one thing, but actually it unlocks so many benefits. So there's lots of other things I wanted to share on this webinar, but we just don't have time. So I want to just finish with a couple of thoughts, and that is the more we do together, the more hard things we do together, which is why I work exclusively with teams, because if you are just by yourself trying to create a meditation habit, you may succeed, but you are 10, 100 times, 1,000 times more likely to succeed if you are doing it together,
Mm.
because we can go further and faster together when we have something in common. And I see this now with my Women Who Plunge sea dipping community, which you can see here. They started off with 3 people. And now, 9 months later, we have sometimes 80 women who are getting in a very, very cold sea in the southeast of England. And we don't do it because we like the cold water. We do it because we want to challenge ourselves, because we want to get outside of our comfort zone, because we want to grow, because we want to be better in all areas of our lives. And that is what I ultimately help people to do, which is just how do we build strong, future-proofing teams who can manage the uncertainty that we are for sure facing now as we go into this next phase of life. So I think this is a good time maybe to stop and share and see if there are any questions. I know there was just something in the chat which you might want to also address.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely have sort of discussion about it. Ian was just mentioning an example from their work where they sort of done a 12-hour day, gave a sort of end of day report, and their manager essentially said, "Oh, I've done more hours than you. Uh, why should I sort of give you grace, essentially?" Um, and they push back, which I think is actually the right thing to do in this kind of environment. They say her response was. Let me just get to it. Their response was she had done more hours than me as well, and I left it like that. I stopped there anyway, as I couldn't accept that attitude, and I think ultimately that's or should be regarded as a sign of healthy work culture. You've kind of already gone above and beyond there by doing a 12-hour day. Obviously, you are sort of sprinting towards a goal, which is, the reality of work for many people, myself included. And you drew a line in the sand. You said enough is enough. This is where I'm bowing out. I'm going to take some time. What I forgot to say, sorry, is that they took some time to do a run for themselves. So, after a 12-hour day, I think that's absolutely fair enough. And it's definitely commendable that, again, you would try and switch the habit from I'm not going to be a couch potato and rot on the sofa. I'm actually going to go do something that's ultimately productive for my mental health.
Yeah. And it's really sad, and thank you for sharing that, Ian. It's really sad that we have leaders in our organizations who still have not connected the dots, that it's not the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. It's
Mm.
you can work hard, but you also need to have that space. But often that comes from a personal responsibility as well. But it's also cultural. So that's why I work with organizations. That's why I work with teams, because a lot of this work is also about being able to look at through the lens of what habits are impacting us. I know that so I always think it's important to start with self, because I think you can only control what you can control. So if you can control your own energy and your own mood and your own um, sort of position on life, then that's where you've got really good foundations. Then we look at how habits are affecting us at work, and almost every single person who has an operational role can relate to, the over emails, the over notifications, the, too many meetings and things like that. So I know there are lots of really good habits. For example, one habit that I know a team does now is they don't take laptops to meetings. So they have shorter, sharper meetings, agendas. Obviously, this works in person, but the French company I was talking about earlier with 150 notifications, what they do is they ask themselves, do I need to send this notification now? Or can it wait till 8 a.m. tomorrow? Or can it wait till 1 p.m. this afternoon? And I think that's a
Mhm.
really, really smart habit. I also see other companies doing positivity parties, for example, on a Monday morning. So a 10-minute positivity party rather than the meeting that always kicks off with, oh, we haven't done this, we haven't done this, we need to do this, we need to, and the Monday starting with all of this pressure.
Mhm.
So there's just someone in the chat, Tobias Andreas, who said, "Do I understand correctly? Most important thing is create community of one healthy habit." So
Mhm.
what I think is important is each individual chooses a habit that's relevant for them. I think we give people autonomy, whatever that is for them. And but we do it together as a team. So we always set everyone a challenge of doing it for the next 21 days. And once we've started with building your own individual habit, but doing it as a team, then we can look at what is going on within the company. That so we would do a very similar session to this, but this time instead of a day in the life of yourself, it would be a day in the life of your team. And people then start to uncover all of these very interesting habits that are
Mhm. Mhm.
holding them back.
I really do like that. I just want to sort of stay there just for a little bit longer. This is one of the questions I actually have for you, Kat, which is, how, we've spoken predominantly in this session about sort of how we can change habits as individuals, but obviously we've got people in here from teams. Maybe some of them are managers or leaders themselves. What are some of the practical implications or that we can use to really bring this into an organization? I really love that idea of, as a team leader, uh, perhaps creating just a little bit of accountability and saying to the team, okay, everyone choose a habit, obviously being a habit that you're comfortable sharing, and let's track it collectively together. I'll tell you on a weekly basis how my habit changing is going along. You tell me about yours, and hopefully there'll be sort of a team wide change over time.
Yeah, I think so. A really simple thing. Obviously, you can scan my QR code. You can talk to me about how we could work together. But something you could do immediately in your teams is do the day in the life exercise and say, okay, let's just have a quick conversation about this. Let's do a typical day in the life of ourselves within our companies. What are we doing collectively as a team that is holding us back? And what's one thing we could do differently that would improve things? And I think when you use a tool like Mentimeter, which doesn't make people feel vulnerable, doesn't force them to say something in front of their colleagues, it's a brilliant way of actually starting this conversation. And for me, this idea of getting people to laser sharp focus in on one thing, like it's really powerful and it's very practical.
Definitely, definitely.
I don't know that we have much time left, but because we've
Yeah, maybe I think it's maybe an appropriate time to sort of close there. We've got perhaps 2 minutes left, but we can surely give I think 2 minutes back to everyone. Thank you all very much for attending. It was lovely to see you all in the chat and have some of these discussions. We will have a sort of full sort of one pager takeaway that I'll circulate with everyone. We'll also share the recording as well. Be sure to check out Kat for all of the wellness and team wellness that you could ever ask for. And by all means, if you're interested in, let's say, a way to propagate culture within your own organization, MELP can certainly help with that. So thank you all very much for attending. Have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your week, and hope to hear you soon. Bye.
thank you. Sea dipping sounds cool. It is.
Yeah. Was that the photo from the sea dip?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's nice. That's cool.
it's so nice.
How many were there in the end? You said 80?
Some weeks we have 80. Yeah, it varies on yeah, what's going on that week and Oh, dragon boating. I don't know what that is, but that sounds very
Dragon boating. Let's have
exciting.
a quick Google at that. Dragon boating. Oh, yes, of course. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Brilliant. Okay, cool. We'll end it there.
Yeah, thank you. It was really
Thanks so
great.
much, everyone. I think I need to stop the recording. We just do.